Every time you and I play Minecraft, we use different game mechanics. Take a look for yourself. Swimming, experience, walking, crawling, breaking blocks, breeding animals. These are just some of the mechanics that exist in Minecraft. But have you ever wondered what those mechanics were like when they were first added to the game? How they have changed over the course of Minecraft's development? Today we're going to take a look at a few basic mechanics. Enchanting mechanics. In general, this video appeared because of the idea to show you what was enchanting in Minecraft when it first appeared. But then came the idea to look at the different mechanics that are in the game. So let's talk about enchanting first. All the new features that appeared in the game, Notch almost constantly showed on his Twitter. Enchantments were no exception. He simply posted a tweet with the caption enchantment table and attached a screenshot from the game. The screenshot showed the GUI of the enchantment table. It looked very similar to what we have now. The funny thing is that the enchantments were, as they are now, written in standard galactic font, but they could be translated. The first being, well played, internet, you're good. The second being, these names will be random and confusing. And the third being, each spell requires an experience level. So, for the first time in history, the translation of the enchantments actually had meaning. 2 days later, Notch also shared a screenshot showing an enchanted iron armor and sword. In Beta 1.9, pre-release 3, the enchantment mechanic made its first appearance in the game. In the creative menu, for some reason, the enchantment table did not display the name, and if being in creative, enchantments also required experience. In general, as it is now, the player didn't need to place lapis lazuli for enchantments. Only the player's experience was needed. Once a player enchanted their item, the game did not display what enchantment was applied to the weapon or armor. It only said that it was enchanted. Books to get the maximum, at that time, the 50th level, were also needed. The more the better. But the problem was that placing a sufficient number of bookshelves, the player did not get a guarantee of a high level. So, players had to place and pick up an item every time to catch that desired maximum possible level of enchantments. In fact, that level was the one that had a chance for really good enchantments. I should add that when the game displayed a certain number of desired levels for enchantments, that's how many you had to give. I mean, clicking on the 50th level, the player took off exactly 50 levels. At the time, to collect such an amount was a challenge. Of course, after a while, Notch decided to reduce the maximum level to 30. Because of this, the number of bookshelves needed to get the maximum level was also reduced. Instead of 30, only 15 were needed. In addition, in the enchantment table, the last enchantment began to show the maximum possible level of enchantments, depending on the number of bookshelves. In Update 1.8, the Bountiful Update, by the way, the name describes it perfectly. In fact, the developers decided to completely rework the mechanics of enchantments. Now, the enchantment table has a second slot. It is designed for lapis lazuli. The table eats lapis lazuli first, instead of the displayed levels. By default, hovering the cursor over the enchantment, the game showed the first guaranteed spell that will be applied to the item. Roughly speaking, enchanting as a mechanic hasn't changed in any way since then. Fishing mechanics. If you're wondering what came first, fishing rod or fishing, the answer is simple. Fishing rod, but it had no functionality and it could be stacked. For the first time, such mechanics appeared in the alpha version, 1.2.0. This update is also called Halloween. In fact, in it for the first time appeared such a dimension as the Nether. But about this, we will talk in a series of videos, retrospectives of Minecraft. In the beginning, of course, fishing was the most primitive thing. The player would cast a rod, and every game tick triggered a 1 in 500 chance that the player would be able to catch a fish. If you counted everything up, on average, every 364 game ticks, the player caught a fish. There was only one raw fish item, no treasure or trash at that time. In the beta version of the game, rain was added. It began to affect the chances of catching fish. When it rained, the chance became 1 in 300, thereby reducing the average number of cycles from 346 cycles to 207. So, the player increased the chances of catching a fish by 40%. In the full-fledged release of Minecraft, fishing began to bring the player experience. For each successful catch of fish, the player began to receive experience points. In version 1.7.2, fishing was radically redesigned. In addition to fish, the player could now catch treasures, enchanted books, rods and bows, saddles, tags, and lilies. If there's treasure, there's also trash. Water bottles, rotting flesh, leather, strings, bowls, sticks, bones, tripwire hooks, ink sacs, and leather boots. There were also unique enchantments created for the fishing rod, the luck of the sea, and the lure. In the beginning, the lure enchantment increased the chances of catching fish, and the luck of the sea increased the chances of catching treasure. A little later, this was changed as well. The lure no longer increased the chances of catching fish, but only decreased the waiting time for a catch by 5 seconds per level. I mean, not exactly fish, but treasure and trash in particular. The luck of the sea began to increase the chances of catching treasure, of course, reduce the chances of catching trash, but also the usual fish. In version 1.16, fishing was changed again, due to the fact that it was, to put it mildly, too imbalanced. Players massively created AFK farms of fish. It brought a lot of enchanted books, experience, in food, while the construction costs were very small. The developers decided that this shouldn't be the case and reworked the processing system. Treasure was now caught specifically in the open waters. The 5x4x5 area of blocks around the float should be water, and there should be air above this area. In this case, the player would be able to catch treasure, but fish could be caught as before. Breeding animals and mobs. As far as I am concerned, this is one of the most important game mechanics in the game. Of course, this time, it was not without playing with the audience via Twitter. Notch did it again. He posted a screenshot from the game showing the new mechanics. This time, there were plenty of sheep and a few that were in love mode. This mechanic first appeared in the second pre-release to beta 1.9. Back then, all friendly mobs could be bred with no resting time required for them. They could be bred infinitely and instantly. There were no options for babies either, of course. All animals were born as adults at once. Sheep were always born with white wool, regardless of the color of their parents. Even more, I will say, even snow golems could go into love mode. All they had to do was feed them with wheat. But unfortunately, they couldn't have offspring. They were always fighting amongst themselves for some reason. After a few days, Notch added calves, lambs, chickens, and, of course, piglets. Now, by breeding their parents, they were producing smaller copies of themselves. For some reason, all the baby animals had disproportionate heads relative to their bodies. Except, of course, for the kittens and the villagers. Their heads matched their bodies. In one of the snapshots, zombie babies appeared. They appeared if a regular zombie infected the villagers. They didn't even burn in the sun at that point. A little later, breeding animals began to bring players experience. Of course, we should not forget about the breeding of villagers. It was different from what was added to the regular animals. In the beginning, it was called Wish. To breed 2 villagers, they only had to be given food. A total of 12 wish points had to be gained. Bread gave 4 units, and carrots, potatoes, and beets, 1 unit each. Once the villager had the right number of points, he would get a wish and go into love mode. Of course, later this mechanic was improved. Villagers, in addition to food, needed a bed, even 3 pieces, 1 for each partner and the 3rd for the child. Only in this case, they would go into love mode. In addition to breeding, the developers thought about the growing up of animals, and they added the ability to reduce the time of growing up by feeding them their favorite food. Each feeding reduced the remaining time to grow up by 10%. Somewhere around 28 units of food reduced the time to about a minute, which is really a lot compared to the original time of 20 minutes. Also, lambs reached maturity 1 minute earlier for every time they consumed grass. In older versions of Minecraft, ocelots could occasionally breed on their own. They are the only animals in Minecraft that could do that. Of the unusual facts, I will add that breeding horses, donkeys, and mules is the most expensive in the game. It requires not just food, but also gold. In Minecraft, you can even breed aggressive mobs. These are hoglins, but even then, they will be aggressive to the player. Potion-Brewing Mechanic. One of the most underrated mechanics in the game. On the official Minecraft website in 2017, an article titled Meet the Magma Cube was published, in which Tom Stone, Mojang's creative assistant, revealed that originally the brewing system was supposed to be procedural, meaning recipes were supposed to be different each time the Minecraft world was generated. That idea was abandoned, and thank goodness. In general, when Notch and Jeb were thinking about how to add potions to the game, they came up with a great idea: cauldrons. In the cauldrons, the player was supposed to brew potions. To do this in the cauldron should be poured water, and then by placing the ingredients should appear potions. Correctly combined ingredients could only give positive effects of potions, and wrong combinations gave negative effects. The system was complex, had no graphical interface, and formed a lot of duplicate potions. That means 2 absolutely identical potions could be prepared in several different ways. Moreover, cauldrons did not have their ID number, and it was impossible to get a cauldron without modifications. Then in beta 1.9, pre-release 2, Notch and Jeb decided to abandon the previous potion brewing system and added the familiar brewing stand. They also added a graphical interface for it. In addition, 150 different potion combinations have been removed from the game, leaving only 25 regular potions. At the same time, the effects, nausea, invisibility, and blindness were no longer available as a potion. At that time, no blaze powder was needed for brewing, only its rod, so there was no fuel provided, but the brewing time took a full 30 seconds. Then Notch thought it would be a good idea to add splash potions to the game, and so he did. You could get them by adding gunpowder to any potion in the brewing stand. In version 1.1, the brew time for potions was reduced from 30 seconds to 20. In the combat update 1.9, the developers decided to add fuel to the brewing stand. Blaze powder was perfect for this. In the beginning, 1 unit could perform 30 operations. That is essentially cook 90 potions. But then the developers reduced the number of operations to 20. Still in the same version 1.9, there are new types of potions, lingering potions. potions. They can be obtained if you place any splash potions in the brewing stand, but use Dragon's Breath as an ingredient. Surrounding the lingering potion with 8 arrows, we received a tipped arrow with an effect. I don't know if you remember or not, but Jeb used to release snapshots before the combat test, and here in one of the versions, potions with the same effects could be stacked in packs of 16. Hopefully, such a feature will still appear in the original Minecraft. The potion mechanics have not changed in any way since the combat update. Dual wield mechanic. I realize that this mechanic is relatively recent, although it's actually been 8 years since then. Feel old. The story behind the creation of dual wield at the same time began back in 2011. In one text interview, when asked, will a left-hand shield be added, Jeb replied, Notch is working on dual wielding items. But since then, there's been no movement in that direction. Although, when the map was added to the game, the player held it with both hands. A full 5 years later, the ability to wield a second weapon was added for the combat update. Of course, this slot was created for a shield, and essentially, wielding a double sword was not possible, but it helped players a lot. After all, in this slot, you could place anything you wanted. Until version 1.16, this mechanic was not touched in any way, only added the ability to replace the active item in the second hand by pointing the cursor at it. Unfortunately, the Bedrock version of the game was very complex. In the then Pocket Edition, a second hand slot was also added, but only arrows and the Totem of Undying could be placed there. A little later, when the Pocket Edition turned into Bedrock, in this slot, you could place maps, and for some reason, unknown to me, Nautilus shells. What was that for? I have no idea. It wasn't until 2019 that the developers added the ability to put a shield in this slot. Until now, you can't place any items or blocks in this slot, only the ones I listed before. Okay, I think for the pilot series, this amount of mechanics will be enough. As a reminder, I'm waiting for your criticism on what I should add to this section and what I should remove. I'm generally interested in learning the mechanics myself, because I really didn't know that potions used to be able to be made directly by the cauldron. Mechanics in Minecraft is still a lot, so write me whether I should continue to do this category. While you are waiting for a new video, I suggest you watch these. They are also very interesting. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and click on the bell. We'll hear from you again.